Hey Danny, how are you? I appreciate your time. I appreciate you chatting with me today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for obviously having me on. Super excited just to kind of detail everything that we've done so far. But just to give you a brief intro, so I am the founder and CEO of Opus Apps Inc., primarily Opus. And what we're effectively doing here is just basically creating economic value and performance opportunities for musicians. Our mission is to really empower professional musicians, create a platform where we're servicing them and we're obviously creating the best kind of performance opportunities for them. So that kind of explains us in a nutshell. We are very early in our stage, but excited for all the traction and all the momentum that we've gathered so far.
Awesome, awesome. Just for a little bit of background, I first met Danny at the Startup Weekend New York Music Edition, where they actually took first place. So that's no easy feat. There's definitely lots of great products and ideas. And Opus, I'm not sure how long if you were working on it before, but Opus is a company that decided to go from the Startup Weekend experience to developing its own actual corporation, actual platform, and have committed to moving forward with the idea, the project, and now the business. So, congrats to you guys, and
Yeah.
tell me about some of the press you've gotten and some of the the headaches, but also some of the successes that's happened since that startup weekend.
Yeah, sure. And just to peel the onion back, so I guess prior to the contest event, that was back in October 2018. I was just tinkering with the idea conceptually, just
Okay,
really
cool.
just kind of drawing things out, really writing out, what my experiences were, as a musician or wannabe musician, because I don't think anyone's gonna pay to watch me play, but
Well,
just some of the
they might.
yeah, exactly. So I think one part of it was just like, hey, what are some of the problems that I faced or some of the awkward moments? And then effectively meeting my girlfriend, living with her, who is a professional violinist, who basically gets paid every weeknight or weekend to do any type of event. It could be a corporate event, it could be a bar mitzvah or a sweet 16. And someone who went to music school, I think it just made me realize, all right, this is definitely a problem. And some of the problems that I faced were very similar to some of the things that she was going on. And so, effectively, I just kind of drew this thing out. I would cold walk to a bunch of venues, and we live in Jersey City, so it was pretty accessible to go down the West Village and all these like really cool pop-up slash cafes in Jersey City. It's becoming like a really artsy scene in that neck of the woods. So I was just able to talk to all these venue managers and bar owners, and they were just like, "Hey, this is really cool. I've never heard of anything like this, and I'd love to check it out." And I was just struggling just because I was a non-technical person. I didn't know anything about coding or designing or UX UI. I mean, I was
Yeah.
really just watching a bunch of, or I guess listening to a bunch of podcasts, watching a bunch of YouTube videos, talking to friends, and then the event was just an opportunity. And I felt like there was a lot of just awesome things going on energy wise, like just being in a giant facility with just you know 50 plus applicants who are other founders, other dreamers, technical folks. That was just like, I've never been exposed to that at all. And then let alone winning, because I came in there with zero expectation.
Yeah.
I thought people were just gonna laugh that it was like a stupid idea, because I don't know if you remember, Patrick, but there were a lot of other developers that were building some really cool products,
Yeah.
and
There's
I thought it was so, yeah, exactly. I thought it was so tech driven, that no one would even remotely think that this was even like worth pursuing. But yeah, I mean, I won. Some of the problems that I faced was actually finding really quality co-founders and and assembling the co-founding team. And I'm happy to share some insights on that. I'm fortunate enough to just kind of muscle through some of the bad apples and really find a great kind of partner, great co-founder group, and we've just been putting our heads down and just kind of getting rejected and learning from all these rejections as we're kind of building this thing out.
Sure. So what have been some of those rejections? Have you been seeing them from artists, from the venues? Um,
Yes. So I think the first problem that we were going through was, we were, to be honest, it's difficult to break down the things that you pick up online and listening to podcasts and reading books, because they give you kind of a blueprint on like what it takes to be a startup founder and like the things that you should do in principle. And I don't want to say that they're not valid, but there's also like a kind of like fantasy sense of it and then the reality sense of it. And so I think I was just really pushing all the things that I was reading from blog posts on other VCs. I think fundraising was one huge critical thing that we needed to do, but more importantly, a lot of just issues on understanding the dynamics of, speaking with angel investors versus VC investors, and having
mhm,
your pitch and narrative broken down into a way that is concise and it makes sense, understanding your business model, understanding like what really your company is looking to do, versus what you want it to do, 15 years, 10 years out. And then, so that's one end of it. I think the other problem was actually just like the business in and of itself. And I think the things that I'm learning is that it really just comes down to the people. I mean, it's so cliche that all these early stage, pre-seed investors or, fund managers and VC guys are all saying, hey, we want to look at the team. And I used to just roll my eyes because I'd hear this all the time. But
mhm.
I just totally understand why they say that, because it is hard. There's an ugly side to the business. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of no's. And we were getting that a lot. And I think they just want to see if you could persevere through it and still be creative and still figure out your North Star, and just galvanize like really smart, talented people. So I think for my personal take as like the founder CEO, some of the problems that I faced was like the fundraising aspect, also problems from like customers, early customers that saying, you guys are ridiculous. Like, what is this company? What is this platform? Showing them very early alpha / beta prototypes. And then ultimately just, kind of muscling through the right personnel. We were dealing with a lot of other designers and developers that sounded so, I don't want to be too rude, but that sounded so effing good on paper, right? They had the part written down, their CV looked amazing, their LinkedIn profiles looked amazing, and then working with them, you just realize that they weren't the right fit.
Sure.
So that is another major problem that I would definitely highlight, that I kind of like had to suffer through, but I have the scar tissues to prove it, and they're healing pretty well, so that's a good thing.
That's great to hear. So I have a couple questions about the venue side of things,
Yeah.
and when you're reaching out to a venue, what
hmm
do they usually consider? What is their usual process for finding talent? Actually, let's
Yeah.
back
So
up a bit, because I
sure.
want to delve more into the actual app, the product, what you're doing, and what do you help artists with first and foremost? Who are your two main customer groups? You did mention it earlier, but let's dig a little bit
hmm
deeper. Who are your target groups, and what do you do for them?
Yeah. So let's kind of delineate it in this way. Like the first, I'd say 6 to 7 months, call it, we were just radically focused on helping the musicians out. We initially assumed and thought that we would create like a reverse auction marketplace, right? Like we would get a ton of inventory, a ton of musicians, and effectively, if we had, a ton of musicians on our Rolodex and our platform and our beta, then we can go to each venue, knock on their doors and say, oh my God, look at this diverse pool of XYZ musician, XYZ artists. We're going to match make it. And we're going to send this to you. And on paper and on pitch, that sounds really good. But what we realize is that, musicians are their schedule and their day-to-day jobs are basically in flux on a weekly basis. So things just constantly change for them. And then also realizing that, at the end of the day, you can have a million musicians on a platform, but you need to figure out how to kind of qualify these types of musicians, but more importantly, kind of create these value propositions, because the musicians aren't going to make you or turn your company or turn your business into like a million plus run rate, 10 million, $100 million run rate. At the end of the day, the dynamics are these are musicians, they need help finding jobs, they deserve to get paid and treated like professionals. And on the other side of the musician kind of industry dynamic, you have the buyers and you have the booking managers and the booking agents and the venue managers and all these places that would have access to live music. And so the first 6 months, we're just focusing on just what can we build that would make musicians happy, that they would like, that speaks to them, that's just a little bit different than what they're seeing today. And I think we've successfully managed to do that. We, generated revenue, we've iterated our platform, and we kind of narrowed down a key feature set that makes sense for the musicians. I think now our mission is just, focusing in the next 8 to 12 months, just getting all the venues on board, understanding their booking process, because we've just sat down with them and we've booked musicians ourselves. Johnny, Chris, and I just basically had to be de facto